Hello and welcome to Chintan Chats. Here we are. We're lucky that today we have Pradeep Dadlani who's made the time to talk to us. Pradeep is very well known in the world of waste, solid waste, liquid waste, and he heads up a very well known consulting firm called SciComm. He has an engineering degree from BITS Pilani and he has an MBA from FMS in Delhi, and he's worked for more than 30 years in this whole area. And I really wanted to talk to you, Pradeep, about landfills because I know that I can't get a better person than you. And the reason I feel landfills are very important to talk about is because somehow, even if we segregate and compost and recycle, still minimum to minimum, everybody's waste, at least 15% reaches the landfill, at least. And we all know that landfills are becoming big. We know all kinds of things. Landfill mein aag lag jati hai, there are fires. So a lot of the news today is about landfills. Ke kude ke pahad, mountains of waste. So let's just start right away. Let's use the fact that you're here with gratitude. So please tell me, what is wrong with having landfills?
So landfills basically it's the accumulated waste over the years in the urban local bodies, which, and we know some classic examples in Delhi. The three landfills in Delhi, they have these heaps which are of height of 50 meters to 70 meters, and each one of these three locations have legacy waste of about 8 to 10 million tons each. Now, apart from that, the 10,000 hectares of urban land is taken up by the landfills.
This is all over India.
All over India, and urban land, prime land. Third, we have issues like, जैसे आपने बोला, fire का एक issue होता है. There is a leachate problem. Then the habitat around that, and then the informal sector which works there without the safety aids, and there are a lot of other issues. So realizing all this, the government, there are cities who have started working on it now. But still it is a long way off. I mean, out of 4,500 urban local bodies who are supposed to work on this, about 70 or 80 are actively working on this.
Tell us more about what is the problem with leachates. Explain what is a leachate.
Leachate is the water which contains some contaminants which can really pollute the groundwater. वो पानी को पूरा खराब कर सकता है अगर उसको properly treat नहीं किया जाए. ये एक बहुत बड़ा issue है.
So, if I may, landfills, are landfills absolutely essential in the solid waste system ecosystem?
See, we all are striving for zero waste landfills. And ideally, it should have been that...
You mean no landfills?
No landfills, yeah. And there are some cities, I don't want to name them, in Kerala, they don't have a landfill. But because of some other reasons, because the land is not available. But it is because of the legacy waste. Now, that is a major issue.
What is legacy waste?
Legacy waste is the cumulative municipal solid waste which has been getting accumulated over the years
in the landfill.
It has in the landfill, and which has not been processed or sanitary landfilled properly.
So the problem would be that these landfills are just becoming mountains because old waste is accumulating.
Yes.
And there's a limit to how much you can make it into a mountain.
Yes, and non-availability of fresh land for the new landfills or the dump sites, and also that what happens is, even in those cities where the legacy waste management, bioremediation, biomining processes have started, there also the speed is very slow.
What I want to ask you about is that the studies show that every single landfill in the world only has an engineered life, after which it is a time bomb,
yes,
waiting to pollute.
Okay.
So, isn't it desirable to give up having landfills completely?
Ideally, we should do that. We should try to do that. But what happens is, because of the historic reasons and because of the non-compliance issues, and also in many cities, there is lack of processing facilities. So it is, the waste is not segregated, then there is lack of processing capacity. So this is all being dumped actually.
Ah, so what percentage of cities in India today dump their waste?
Almost 90%.
I see.
90% of they all, and some of them have only named the processing facilities which don't function properly. Ideally, only the rejects from the processing plant, waste processing plant, and the inerts should go to a landfill.
Can you tell me examples of what is an inert waste?
Inert waste would be like small pellets, stones, some material, mud, etc., which will come into that. That is a pure inert material.
Pure inert
Yeah,
material.
yeah.
Now, Swachh Bharat Mission 2 has been really, really trying to address this by talking of bioremediation for landfills. They have put a lot of money, given a lot of money to, India has over 4,400 urban local bodies. I'm not even talking of rural India at this point because it's so overwhelming. But they've given money and they're saying, please bioremedy your landfills or remediate your landfills so that we can reduce the volume and the same land can be used and only used for certain kinds of waste. So they're looking at a systemic shift, really, composting, recycling, collection, and this. So you, I know, have been working with bioremediation. So how is it going?
So the problem, there are manifold problems. One is that at places where it has started, the bioremediation, even today I can name many cities where the legacy waste on a daily basis, which is being bioremediated, is less than the fresh waste which is coming there.
So
So it is
mountains are still climbing.
Yeah, still climbing. So I can name many cities where
Please name a few.
Kanpur, for example.
Okay.
Kanpur, they get about 1200 tons of waste at their Punki plant,
Okay.
which is the waste processing plant. But the quantum of waste which they are able to remediate, the legacy waste, is 500. Even after starting the work in right earnest and trying to do their best, they are able to do only 500 to 600 tons per day. So that is the kind of problem. It is surmounting every day, even where the work has started. And there are many ULBs because of other issues. One is, of course, the under Swachh Bharat Mission 2.0, which actually ends in May 2026. Now there are just 2 years left for that. The value which is offered to the ULBs for legacy waste is 550 rupees per ton. But what, to the best of my knowledge, most of these contracts, when the private parties come and bid for these projects, the normal bidding rate is about 1,000 to 1,100 rupees per ton.
So it's double the money available.
Double the money. So, but this is the upper limit, and of course, then they have to make provisions from their other, ULBs, their own budget, other heads of their budget. Second is that the most of these ULBs, they give a kind of a volume of the waste, which is the legacy waste, which is
What do you
present
mean
there.
by volume?
Volume means in cubic meters, because they will estimate, okay, this is 70 meters height, 120 meters width, the mountain and the, in this land. So they work out some volume. But it is, unless you know the density, you do some characterization of waste, it is very difficult to find out the quantum of waste based on which. So when a agency comes forward to actually undertake this work, and then while they are bidding, they don't have that set of information which should be made available to them. Other is the difference in the actual bidding cost or the price and the what is provided for by the central government. Also, the capacity, the technical capacity of the ULBs is really lacking in this. Fourth one, I would say, is their
When you say capacity, what do you mean of the
capacity
ULBs?
to monitor, to plan for this, for the so they have now got used to collection, transportation, which they have been doing for ages, processing and disposal also now through SPM 1.0 and through the after the rules 2016 came about. But legacy waste management is still a new subject for them, for the ULBs, and which is now being taken up seriously by the central ministry, MOHUA, and also they have been many of these ULBs are now participating. But still it remains a distant dream. It needs to be really, and there are very few agencies who are active in this. That is another issue. So if we have to, there are 4 or 5 prominent agencies who are doing this work.
Tell me something. Haven't these agencies cartelized and started asking for, a lot of money
That,
and kind of almost blackmailing the ULBs?
yeah, so that is a problem. But so what happened was, at the request of MOA, GIZ, and I worked with them on developing a contract RFP.
GIC is who?
German Development Agency.
Okay.
The short form is GIZ, GIZ, if you want to call it. So we developed, the 4 members from our team, we developed a contract module, which, basically to standardize the bidding document, because ULBs were using their state regulations to, like any contract, like road contract or any infrastructure contract, because they're not used to this. It's a new thing for them. So we developed this standard document, which has been put into use now, and it's a standard document. And there are 3 categories of the quantum of legacy waste, and for which there are different provisions. For example, there is one on very small cities, which have a legacy waste of about 0 to 3 lakh tons. That is one category. 3 to 1 million tons, 3 lakh to 1 million tons. And the third one is 1 million tons plus. And there are many 1 million ton plus, including Kanpur and Delhi. There are at least 3 sites which have 1 million. They're all 8 to 10 million tons each. Chennai, Ahmedabad, Surat, all these places.
I kind of feel very bad for ULBs when I listen to you, because they have, waste is not the only thing they do.
Yes.
The public doesn't segregate. People throw waste where they like. Just talking of waste alone, ULBs have to look at so many other things, whether it's taxation or whether it's the right to build. But even if they only had to look at waste, the world is changing so fast, the laws are changing so fast, but the public isn't changing very fast.
Yes.
In fact, the public is very slow. So, just the Kanpur example that, the fresh waste is much more than the remedied waste. But, how much can the ULB start doing intravenous interventions into a public that doesn't care? I mean, why don't people just compost in their colonies? It's
Yes.
not a new thing.
Yes.
It's a pratha. People used to. So, I mean, at some level, don't you feel that the ULBs really are in a position where it's, the devil and the deep sea?
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right, because I think one major thing which could be done in this regard is, like, agencies like Chintan, they can take up this IC in a big way, to basically educate and sensitize the people, that, and there are decentralized models available.
Yeah.
There are some states who have taken the lead. For example, Trivandrum doesn't have a dumping site or a landfill site. So they do composting in a bin form at the decentralized level, at the household level. And there are regulations to that effect.
What do they do with inert waste?
So inert waste is, it is being used for, they have some material recovery facilities where some of this inert waste is used by the PWD department for, for the roads and low-lying areas. But that is a big problem otherwise, because the fresh land is not available. In Kerala specifically, I'm saying, because it's even the villages are extension of the urban areas.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't make out a difference between, where it's a village, and Kochi would probably be, in terms of infrastructure, would be the same. So that is one thing. Some states have taken the lead. They are doing but IC is very important, sensitizing, and also the, the decentralized composting, for example, it could solve partly the, but then there are no market linkages. I think lack of market linkages is also a major issue for the biomined, material. Where do I send my RDF if there's no cement plant? Refuse derived fuel.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that now that you've, now we understand what a tough position the ULBs are. But what happens to the material? Tell us a little more. Explain the process of biomining.
This process has to start from the planning by the ULB, the characterization of the the waste there. So some
Which means what all does it
what all
comprise?
does it comprise of? What is the density? If there are any hazardous materials also inside, because later on you have to tie up for the any biomedical waste inside the those heaps. It has to go to the common biomedical waste treatment facility, or the hazardous waste has to go to a TSDF facility,
Which is what is
which is
TSD?
the basically the hazardous waste
Yeah.
treatment facility, and there are not too many in the country. That is one part of it, but they need to know the what is the characterization of this waste, the planning, and there are provisions for especially for the larger cities. There are drone surveys which could be done, then the total station survey, contour mapping. All this is normally should be part of the bid document when you are going for this. Then the process of bioremediation and biomining starts. So obviously your equipment, which could include the screens and the trommels and the earth moving equipment.
So,
The
what you really do, if I may ask you, is from what I've seen on different landfills, is they basically, make furrows, and then they take the old waste, because they
Yeah.
only work in the old parts of the landfill,
Yeah.
because a landfill is a huge open
yeah, yeah.
kind of medan, kude ka medan,
Yeah.
if not a kude ka pahad. So if it's a pahad, they make it a medan, like a park,
Yeah.
and then they let it dry.
Yeah.
If it's not dry, mostly it's actually very dry.
Yeah.
And then they put it through a bunch of screens and things
Trommels,
like
trommels, and
trommels, and it's like sieving the waste.
yes.
And then they sieve the waste, and you get mitti on one end,
Yes.
and you get these particles at the
Right.
other end.
So you have different fractions. Above 150 dia is typically it's a it is a it's a inert waste, the large stones or pellets.
Plastic.
Then for plastic, and there are 2 or 3 different categories as per the CPCB regulations.
Central Pollution Control
Central
Board.
Pollution Control Board regulations. So there are, so through this trommels and sieves, so there is like 30 to 50 millimeter, 50 to 80, and so on and so forth. And then part of it is the recyclable, the larger, the
Chunks.
chunk, and the smaller ones are the RDFs, and less than that, which is less than 4 or 8 millimeter dia, that is mostly the bio, which is already composted. So through this process you try to segregate, bioremediate,
land.
and then biomining is basically have a stabilization and then use of biocultures for the lower diameter fractions to
Make it all into a kind of mud, so to say.
kind of mud, which is, you can call it a green earth, or it can never replace a compost, which we sometimes tend to aim for, which is not true, because
Yeah, it must be so toxic.
yeah, it is toxic, and the leachate also is to be taken care of, because the moment you start working on this, then the water, and especially in the monsoon season, depending on the groundwater levels, you have to have a leachate ponds for collection and the treatment system also. So these are all the different aspects which need to be worked into: the equipment, the technology, the collection of leachate, etc.
So I have a question there for you. So now we have all this happening. How long does a typical, what are the kind of times? You're talking of monsoon. So clearly, I know it depends on the size of the landfill and how old it is. But I'm assuming this is a multi-month or even a
Yes,
multi-year
it is.
effort.
So in the RFP document which has been prepared for the larger landfill sites, where 1 million ton plus waste is accumulated, they are given a period of 3 years, up to 3 years. And for the
That's
smaller ones, it is 2 years, and the smallest one, 0 to 3 lakh, it is 1 year. 0 to 3 lakh tons of legacy waste, category 1, which is the
okay.
smaller cities or the places where the new landfill site may be, which
Okay,
is
so they're
being-
given a year.
Yeah. So in a year you have to do it. For the middle category, which would probably include cities like Ghaziabad or Meerut or Saharanpur, has to be done in 2 years, and there are key performance indicators also set. The payment terms are also linked to that. So it has been standardized to a very large extent,
That's
but this is still the work has just started actually on that.
So, what percentage of landfills in our country would have started this bioremediation?
I would say out of 4,500 or about actively about 70 to 80, or in some are in planning stage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've
So let's
started.
say about 2 to 3%.
2 to 3%.
But there are a big percentage, big chunk of ULBs are at the planning stage now, because things are getting clearer, and they are hoping to get new infrastructure players, so that
Right.
the costs could come down for the.
So, question again to you. How, I mean, it's a very tough proposition. Do we have enough technical capacity in our country? Are there enough people who can do this? Because one reason we can always say, it's always difficult to take the first step, but this is a very big first step that India has taken. But we also need more and more people to be able to do it. The same few players cannot constantly go and do 4,400. It'll take several
Yes.
decades.
So we need to have new players on the horizon.
We don't have enough.
We don't have enough who are active. There are capable companies, who are, I can name a lot of companies who are not into this business. For them, it's a very small work. That is one. But for the larger projects, let's say Delhi, Kolkata, Mumbai, it may still make sense for again, I'm naming a company for, let's say, L&T to get into this, for example, or even some of the good construction company, infrastructure companies, but they're not into this. For them, it's a very small pie of business. They may not like to enter. So to make it, and also they are very skeptical about the payment terms, and from
Yeah,
the
tell us
ULBs.
what's the difficulty part about the payment?
So difficulty part, one is the difference in what is being reimbursed from the central ministry to the ULBs, which is 550 rupees per ton. The actual quotations, as I mentioned, most of the places we have had several calls with these technical support agencies who are doing this work, four or five. They're typically around, it could vary, but 800 to 1100 rupees. Now there is a big gap there. So
And many municipalities just don't have the money,
yeah,
right?
so they don't have any money to fall back upon.
Yeah.
Maybe some ULB like Pune Municipal Corporation, they have other sources of revenue. They may be able to support their program. Get 50% grant from the government, and they can put in their own money.
Why is the green cess not used?
I have no idea about that, but NGT has been looking at it very closely.
Because the you could explain the green cess. Many people might not know.
Yeah, green cess is basically levied on those components where it is the revenue source which can be utilized for those projects which are in for greening of the environment or the infrastructure.
And they sit with the pollution board.
Yes, and it lies with the the Central Pollution Control Board and the State Pollution Control Board also. But they haven't utilized it. There are some other, I know about Tamil Nadu. They have Tamil Nadu Urban Infrastructure Development Board. So they are doing some part funding of this, a grant kind of a thing.
Right.
So in some states they are doing it. But at a national level, there's no policy.
There's no innovative finance.
No innovative policy. But with standardization of the RFP, and some of these problems may be countered.
Yeah. So I've taken a lot of your time, but I do want to talk before we close about what happens. I know refuse-derived fuel is one of the important components of this, and I know that a lot of the more muddy things either go back to the landfill to flatten it or for land reclamation, etc. But tell us the story of RDF. It's a very refuse-derived fuel, which is these little kind of little puffs of waste, which are supposed to be used in place of other forms of fuel. But it's very controversial. It's difficult. Tell us that story.
So refuse-derived fuels are basically the segregated combustible fractions of the legacy waste, and they have even as per the SWM rules,
solid waste management rules.
Also solid waste management rules 2016, which is like the guiding force for all the operators in the country, including the ULBs. any waste having a calorific value of 1500 kilocalories per kg or more can be consumed as a fuel and can be used as a fuel. That is one thing. So RDF is one type of material which probably constitutes, because what happens is most of the valuable plastics are already taken away by the rag pickers, the informal sector. The compost or the compostable biodegradable fraction is already, it converts to green earth or green soil, which has not much value, but it is a useful resource. The third is the RDF. Almost 60 to 80% of your material is RDF
I
fractions.
see.
So one good end use application is the cement plants.
Yeah, yeah.
And cement plants there are regulations that cement plants, to the extent of 5%, they need to use it, as an alternate fuel, because it's a combustible material. But they have to undertake some capital expenditure investment, which can be between 30 to 50 crore rupees, which is very high for a smaller, mini cement plants, etc. The larger ones have taken these measures, but then the transportation cost is very high.
Yeah.
If a cement plant is more than 200 kilometers away, my transportation costs would far, overweigh whatever, if I were to generate some revenue. Thirdly, these cement plants, it's more of a disposal mechanism for the legacy waste. They are not getting paid actually, because
So the cement plants don't pay for them. They just
don't pay
want them for
yeah,
free at their
exactly.
doorstep.
Yeah. Even in Kanpur, they are being paid some 50 paisa per kg, or 500 rupees for loading, basically, which is a loading. They are not getting paid for the value. It is not the value of the material, just they are disposing it off in compliance with the rules. That is a so this RDF is a major thing. And so if the cement plant, Kerala is a very classic example. There are no good big cement plants there, so they have to send it to either Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu, or in Andhra, or Bangalore, Karnataka, or Telangana. So the transportation cost is very high. The cement plants and the other states are full of these. The other ULBs can supply the similar material which are located close by.
So why aren't we using EPR or extended polluter responsibility? Or in fact, why aren't we applying the polluter pays principle and asking plastic industries to kind of help with this gap? Is there a hesitation?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question actually. See, what happened was EPR is a new policy, which has been in place for plastic waste last 2 years or so, 2.5 years. Now it is applicable. For example, a empty can of Coke company, the Coca-Cola company, responsible for the its disposal in compliance.
More like a bottle,
Like
because
bottle
only
bottle.
certain plastics
Certain
are.
plastics are more, yeah. So now from the legacy waste, because most of these materials do fetch some revenue, especially the PET bottles. So those are already taken up, and there is, even while working on the legacy waste, most of it is taken away by the informal sector, because it's a disposal, and they have linkages with the kawadi walas. फिर उनको
Right.
देके they generate some.
Yeah.
So EPR principle is definitely applicable for the fresh waste. From the legacy waste, if you can also extend, then it is, yeah. But I'm not sure. I haven't seen anyone applying this for the legacy waste.
So one lesson would be, if we want to fight landfills and keep our water and our air and our bodies safe, there's no solution except to dramatically reduce plastics.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you, Bharti, on this, because plastics also, in the legacy waste, you have a lot of these old single-use plastics which are banned now in India, but still, because these are 20-year-old, 30-year-old, so you have those kind of plastics, low-value plastics. And also this provision of GST, on the plastic waste, if you are dealing in that, even at the informal sector or at a small recycler level. So it is basically, it is sort of it is not a sustainable thing for them to deal in those small, low value items. So plastic is PET bottles and all already taken away now, the larger ones, the SDP, PET, etc. But there are many plastic items, almost India still, we have the highest recycling rate in the world.
Right.
But even then, the quantum of waste, plastic waste we are generating is very high. And yeah, there is a issue there. So we
Then,
need to control that, and right from all angles we need to, right from the usage, the like in Port Blair, the 1 liter bottles are not allowed, 2 liters and above only.
even sachets are not
Sachets are
allowed
not
in
allowed.
Port Blair.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So we should learn from places like Port Blair. Even though Port Blair is an island, we have to be really strict.
Yes.
Because despite such good efforts, we will be stuck with a quite a big inefficiency, and the problem will that with that will be we are going to end up drinking and breathing
Yeah.
our own waste. Shall we conclude on that pessimistic note?
Yeah. No, but we are optimistic for the future. In the long run, at least, I'm sure we are getting there, but it'll take time.
Yeah, well, I mean, so many good things have come out of the Swachh Bharat mission. So one would expect that these are uphill tasks. So we have to stay optimistic while, learning to do them well as a country. Thank you, Pradeep,
Thank
for
you.
your
Thank you,
time
Bharti.
and your
Thank you.
expertise.
Thank you.
Thank you.